Welcome back to the First and Gold podcast. I'm your host, Sam Gold. Happy Halloween, everybody, or at least Halloween week by the time this video comes out. And we're here to talk about week 8 of the football season. Man, we're almost just about halfway through. But a lot to talk about for this specific week because, man, I mean, where do I even start? What a 1 o'clock witching hour. What an ending to a 4 o'clock game that we'll get to a little later on. And just a lot of things to really talk about this week. So let's get into it. I always do this at the start of every show. There's going to be some games we're not going to go into. Unfortunately, it's just too much to talk about. So, to Titans, Lions, Bengals, Eagles, Broncos, Panthers, Saints, Chargers, Bills, Seahawks, and yes, Jets, Patriots, we won't be talking about this week. And for people clamoring about the Jets, go back and look at last week's episode. I specifically said if the Jets end up losing this game, which would be 5 losses in a row, I'm done talking about them for the rest of the season. Unless something really major happens again with the Jets or they make this big comeback. I mean, I know I'm talking about them right now, but legit, right now, this is the last time I'm talking about them because I just can't take it anymore. And look, I'm from New Jersey. You want to hear about the Jets? It doesn't even have to be from New Jersey. All media talks about them 24/7 every week. So if you want your Jets coverage, I'm sorry, but at this point, I'm just sick of the Jets. So that's the promise I made last week. That's it. I'm done with the Jets. Let's move on to the games we are going to talk about. So let's go all the way back to Thursday. Vikings, Rams, Thursday Night Football. The Rams come out with a win, 2 in a row now, 30-20 at home. And yeah, I can go on about how this game was a shootout in the first half, and it kind of slowed down in the second half, and overall it's a pretty fun game. But the main storyline people are going to want to be talking about, and I'm going to be talking about, is the face mask penalty. At the end of the game, I have to keep consistent when it comes to these late game penalties that feel like it completely decides the game. Because yes, of course, I don't think anybody's doubting this. It was the most obvious face mask of all time. The ref was literally standing there in clear shot of he had clear view of what exactly happened in the end zone to Sam Darnold. That led to his safety instead of being called for a face mask. Basically ended the game right there. So yeah, obviously it was a face mask. I will never go against that, but you just have to say it once again. The Vikings put themselves in a spot where they needed a face mask to be called in order to keep their chances alive to win the game instead of, beating a team that they were supposed to beat and be up in the fourth quarter against in the Rams. So, kind of two sides to this coin. Now, I will give the Vikings defense a little bit of leeway because Cooper Kupp and Puka both had their first game back. And I'm sure it's hard to be that first team that has to play them when they're back healthy for the first time. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not too much of an excuse. I think that we're starting to see the Vikings slow down their momentum a little bit now with 2 losses in a row. It's tough to watch because, I mean, we'll get to the Commanders game in a second. Thank God they won because the Vikings would be in last right now if the Bears would have won that game in the division. So, they got away with that one there. I'm not sure the Vikings play next week. It might be the Jaguars or another team. I forget. But anyways, yeah, just a tough outcome for them. I think the Rams, that saved their season, the Rams, because there were trade talks of Cooper Kupp going to the Steelers. I know the Chiefs reached out to them during the week. And the fact that they put together that offensive performance, Matt Stafford had some great plays as well. The fact that they did that in this game against a really tough defense in the Vikings, and they're 3-4, only 1 game back out of first place in their division. They're right in it again. So it felt like they were on the cusp of completely tearing down their season, selling a lot of their players, and now you get this big win on Thursday Night Football, and you're right back in the midst. So definitely a tale of two sides in this game. It was fun for the most part up until the end, of course, but Vikings, hopefully this is just a small lull. Kind of like how the 49ers started 5-0 last year, and then I believe they went to 5-3, and then they just dominated basically the rest of their season. Maybe the Vikings have that in them. I think Sam Darnold still played decent enough where I wouldn't be extremely worried, so we'll see what happens from here, but there's a lot more fun games to go through, so let's move on. Packers, Jaguars is our next game on the list. The Packers come out of there, just by a smudge, 30-27 on a game-winning field goal. And man, I mean, where do I even start with this game? I felt like, first of all, that this matchup has never happened, ever. I don't care what anyone says. Packers in Jacksonville just never happened. So just to see it was fun, just to see the teal versus yellow. Like, what is that matchup? Anyways, let's talk about some storylines. I think for the Packers side, although they won, there was a major injury once again to Jordan Love. Now, I just read the reports. He had a groin injury. I just read the reports. It seems like he avoided another disaster, kind of like with his previous injury from week 1. And he might even be back for, I believe they play the Lions next week, which is a huge game. So good for the Packers just getting away with a win here and avoiding another major injury for Jordan Love. Although Malik Willis, once again, he came in, did what he needed to do. Yes, their offense slowed down a little bit, but look, Malik Willis just doesn't turn over the ball right now with Matt LaFleur as his coach. And he had that huge play to Jaden Reed at the end, which was a phenomenal pass, which set them up in field goal range to win the game. And Jordan Love, there's a turnover problem for sure with Jordan Love. Now, with those risks that he always takes, it ends up with a few more touchdowns than interceptions, luckily. And that's been happening a lot of these games, except this game wasn't as good. Just another one of those teams, kind of like the Texans, that I've been very positive about this season. I'm still keeping an eye out of them in the back of my head for some of these performances where they play down to their competition. But I said this with the Texans a couple weeks ago. The same thing with the Packers, especially with Malik Willis coming in and getting the job done. That's scary. That's almost scarier than them winning like how the Lions have been winning, because with teams that are able to pull out victories that are this close, one, it builds character. Two, they run into problems where, even if they ended up losing this game, it's not necessarily the worst thing ever, because you start figuring out these issues. Okay, why did we lose in Jacksonville when we shouldn't have? Let's learn from that. And that's what builds a championship caliber team like the Texans, that I believe they're championship caliber. And now the Packers are kind of going through the same thing. Luckily, they won this game. They're 6-2. And then the Chiefs, of course, that's my favorite team. I've seen them do this a lot where they play down their competition. But being able to win in all these different types of situations instead of just blowing teams out every week actually does help when it matters, because when you get into the playoffs, every game's going to be close. So I'm not panicking on the Packers, especially that Jordan Love didn't suffer a season-ending or even a few-week-long injury. The Jaguars in this game, also a couple injuries. Christian Kirk, it looks like he's out for the rest of the season. So just a disastrous season for the Jaguars that is going to end in more injuries and just sorrow and probably things being torn down in the near future. Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie as well, out 2 to 4 weeks with a rib injury. That's just devastating because he was awesome so far this season. Now, luckily it's not season ending, but man, another injury right there. A positive about their offense, Evan Ingram, he had an amazing catch. I mean, you want to talk about the witching hour, the 1 o'clock. That was just one part of it, watching that touchdown catch to tie up the game late in the fourth quarter. And also, it was National Tight Ends Day. I forgot to mention so far. It's like the NFL's favorite holiday that they keep promoting, which is fun. I like tight ends, so I'm not complaining about it. And he definitely held his own on this holiday with that catch. So it's just another one of those great moments in the late part of the 1 o'clock slate. And then just mix that with the Reed catch at the end and then just the game-winning field goal. It's just one of those great games. Now, unfortunately for the Jaguars, you look at some of these games, they've actually lost a few one-score games where it sucks because Trevor Lawrence obviously hasn't gotten off to a good start this year. He's trying to build his confidence, or should I say I'm trying to build my confidence. Anyways, stupid. Guys, it's Halloween. Let me role play, all right? Anyways, Trevor Lawrence is trying to build up his confidence this season. And performances like this, where he actually played pretty solid. He only had 1 turnover, and I feel like at this point you're just going to get that with him in every game. He's just the type of quarterback he is. But for the most part, for Trevor Lawrence this season especially, it was a solid performance. And then just not to have the pieces around you to back it up and to solidify another win that you desperately needed, and now your season's basically over. It sucks. You're just wasting another year of Trevor Lawrence, even though I would say partially a lot of the flaws of the offense have been his fault. But in a game where you play well like that, you need to build the confidence. And their defense is, truthfully, I think the worst in the NFL. There's just nothing good about it. And they have pieces too. Josh Hines Allen only has like 2.5 sacks this year, which is not good. And yeah, just it feels like that's it for the Jags. And kind of like with the Jets, I don't really feel the need to talk about them for the rest of the season, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, let's move on to another 1 o'clock game. Cardinals, Dolphins. The Cardinals, I predicted this on the podcast. Check the clip out on TikTok. I said the Cardinals were going to upset the Dolphins in Tua's return. They were going to spoil it. They did that exact thing, 28-27 on a game-winning field goal at the end. But first, let's talk about the Dolphins. Obviously, the big storyline, Tua comes back from his injury back in week 2, his concussion. He didn't wear his Guardian cap. But let's talk about his stats a little bit. A good, solid return. It did feel like the offense somewhat went back to normal. I wouldn't say they were extremely explosive, but they still put up 27 points, and they look good. Tua was 28 of 38, 234 yards and a touchdown. There was a point where he took off running and everybody's holding his breath, but they actually slid. He actually slid after his run. Finally, he was learning after, 4 concussions? So props to Tua there. That was nice to see. Tyreek had a fine game. I think he had like 70-something yards. It's tough assessing a game like this because there wasn't many major mistakes from either team. It was just one of those back and forth games where both teams were very even. Kind of like a lower class level of the Vikings-Lions game from last week, where it was very even, and it kind of just came down to which team could make a stop at the end or make just enough plays to get that game-winning field goal. And this time it happened to be the Cardinals, and it's devastating for Dolphins fans because if you would have won this game and went to 3-4, 3-5, you would have been honestly in the wild card race still. And I'm not gonna say their season's over because there's a lot, we still have the second half of the year, but I mean, they definitely played spoiler. The Cardinals did. So they're 4-4. They're tied for first in the division. Marvin Harrison had a huge day, over 100 yards and a touchdown. Trey McBride, shout out National Tight Ends Day once again. He had a big performance, also over 100 yards. Felt like he was wide open every time he got the ball. It just feels like when the Cardinals are on, they're scary. But then there's a lot of times when Kyler Murray is just making mistakes or can't find people open, they're struggling. And this was just one of those games where they took advantage and Kyler didn't make any mistakes. I think he had over 300 yards passing, which hasn't happened in a while. I called them frisky going into the season in my standings predictions. I can't remember exactly what I had them going, maybe 7 wins. But they're right in the thick of it right now. Shout out KSI. They're in the thick of things. It was just one of those games where Miami, they were 11 for 15 on third down. The Cardinals defense was struggling for the most part, but they got the most important third down stop at the end. It was a 3rd and 9. They sent a rusher in there, and Tua just threw an incomplete pass. And just little things like that you're not really going to remember. This is why I want to point them out. Just little stops like that can easily switch something in your season. Now you're looking at 500 first place in the NFC West. And then Kyler is able to make enough plays to get the field goal at the end. And there you go. You got the win. It sucks for the Dolphins, but overall, another great game. Here we go. Let's move on. Okay, Ravens-Browns is your next game. Now, this is a fun one to talk about. I know I'm wearing all this, but if you know me, I'm a Chiefs fan. So I was rooting for the Browns. I was not expecting the Browns to do this at all. The Browns won. It was a huge upset, 29-24 in Cleveland. The first game, Deshaun Watson is out, and Jameis is in. We just did, shout out, go watch our video. We just did a ranking of all 32 NFL backup quarterbacks, where I put Jameis at the top of the solid backup tier. There was a tier right above it that could be a starter in the NFL, and I know I was teetering between the line. And I said in that video that the reason why people think he can be a starter is because of ceiling performances like this. I'll read the stats. He was 27 of 41, 334 yards, and 3 touchdowns. No turnovers for Jameis. Now, he has these games sometimes where he goes out there and just lights the world on fire, kind of like how Joe Flacco has these games sometimes. And look, first and foremost, as a Chiefs fan, I'm just glad they did this to the Ravens. They were getting a little cocky. I was actually getting a little bit nervous about how good their offense was. And their offense was still fine in this game for sure. Lamar Jackson played decent. But the fact that now they have 3 losses on the year, and the Browns were able to do that in a game that nobody was expecting them to, and their defense played pretty solid for most of it, props to them. I'm very excited that the Ravens lost. And look, with Jameis Winston, I just read his stats. he's got to give me at least a 3-game sample size of playing as a net positive for the team, because he could totally go out there next week and throw for 3 interceptions. We've seen it too many times. He was drafted in 2015, guys. There's plenty of tape on Jameis Winston. So although this was very exciting, I'm not gonna say anything further about Jameis, although it was a lot of fun to watch. And overall with the Ravens, I just said their offense was fine. Look, they were sacked 3 times, which is very hard to do against Lamar Jackson, so props to Cleveland's defense. But yeah, the Ravens defense, if you want to flip the coin here, it's just in a funk this season. Ever since they lost to the Chiefs and they lost some pieces in the offseason, it feels like they're really struggling. They're giving up 26 points per game, and they're letting this offense, which is so dynamic right now with Lamar and Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers is doing well this year, and Mark Andrews is finally getting it going. There's going to be games like this that make me not confident come playoff time once again, because now you're looking at it where before the Ravens defense was great during the playoffs, and then it was Lamar that was not playing up to par. Now, even if Lamar does play up to par, which he doesn't do often in the playoffs, now you got to worry about the defensive side of the ball when you're going up against quarterbacks, most likely Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, come January. So I know this might just seem like a fluke for now, and it totally could be, but just keep an eye out for down the season, because if you're asking yourselves, how did the Ravens lose in the divisional round again? I think a lot of signs are going to be pointing back to this defense that has been struggling this season. So they got to get their shit together and make some moves before the trade deadline. They haven't done anything. I don't know what their cap situation's like. Maybe it's something with the cap. But yeah, Ravens, definitely a hole on their team right there as their defense. But we'll move on to another 1 o'clock game that added to this witching hour. Texans-Colts. The Texans come out with another close win. They've been doing this a lot this year. 23-20 at home. CJ Stroud was able to do it once again without Nico Collins. And Stephon Diggs came out, I believe it was with a knee injury. It looked bad. He was holding his knee. Al, I know you got Stephon Diggs in fantasy, so you're praying he's not out for the season. As a football fan, I hope he's not out for the season, because I like Stephon Diggs. I thought he's actually been solid. You know, he talks a lot, but he actually has backed it up this year. He's been a very solid wide receiver 1B type this year. So hopefully he gets better. But yeah, let's talk about CJ Stroud first before we get to some negatives with the Colts side of the ball. But look, don't disrespect CJ Stroud. I've seen this a lot all around online, that CJ Stroud is taking a step back this year. His stats aren't as impressive. There's something off with the Texans offense right now. And yes, look, Nico Collins has been out. That's definitely one thing. But you just go to this game, CJ Stroud, 25 of 37, 285 yards, a touchdown, no picks without Nico Collins. So I don't really get what all the noise is about with CJ Stroud. Sure, he's not making these crazy... I remember he had a great throw to Tank Dell last year against the Cardinals. Like, those types of plays, he hasn't had a ton of them this year. But I said this a couple of weeks ago. Like, they just know how to win these close games. CJ Stroud stays calm and poised in the pocket. And they're sitting at 6-2 right now. So I really wouldn't be complaining if I'm a Texans fan. And I know it's not the Texans fans that are complaining about this. It's other people. But look, they were able to go. It's tough to play a divisional game, especially the Colts, who are solid this year. They're 4-4, but... You know, I got to give props to the Texans when it's due. They were up 10 late in the fourth quarter, and then the Colts scored. So I really don't have an issue with how they're playing right now. I think it's gritty. I think they're learning how to win ugly and in close games, which is what you're going to need for the playoffs. I just said that about 10 minutes ago on this podcast. So, yeah, there you go. Colts side of the ball, especially their offense. Man, I want to think Anthony Richardson is ready for a full-time starting role. But I just don't see it right now. I really don't. And there were so many moments yesterday. I mean, if you want to pick out the major one, it was, I forget how much time was left at the end of the second, or at the end of the first half in the game, and he just made a throw that you cannot make. At this point, it doesn't even feel like a rookie mistake, and he's not a rookie. But it's just inexcusable. I think even the announcer said it was an inexcusable pass at the end of the half that completely shifted the momentum of the game. I mean, yes, they made a couple big plays to Josh Downs. He's a great wide receiver, by the way. Totally underrated. But when Anthony Richardson, he went 10 of 32 in this game. He didn't even complete a third of his passes, and you're in the NFL. I mean, I don't care if you have some great tools, if you got a big arm, if you can run the ball, whatever. Yes, you can make plays occasionally. I get that. He's talented. But at this point, you're in week 8 of your second season in the NFL, and you had a chance to win this game. And you're just setting your team back like this. I feel like you're wasting a season where the Colts could absolutely slip into the playoffs. And it just feels like if they're going to keep Richardson as the starter, they're just hurtling towards 8-9 and missing the playoffs. That's how it feels right now. Just all these inexcusable things. I said this, Joe Flacco should still be the starter. He gives them the best chance to win. If you want to bring Anthony Richardson in on these 3rd and 1s or these QB read options, maybe right at the goal line, and show off his legs a little bit, still have him pass occasionally, that's fine. But as of right now, you got to sit him down and be like, dude, you're not even completing a third of your passes. You're turning the ball over when it matters most, and it's just a disaster, I feel like. So the Colts right now, keep an eye out on them. They're 4-4, and they just got to clean up a lot of these mistakes because they're not a bad team, but quarterback's the most important position in football, and you got to clean that up. So there you go. And our final 1 o'clock game is Falcons-Bucks. Now, this is the rematch of a game a few weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. It was a great overtime thriller. This one, once again, a lot of points put up. Take the over. I think I said that again. The tight ends, once again, National Tight Ends Day, they absolutely flourished in this matchup. Kyle Pitts had 2 touchdowns. Cade Otton had 2 touchdowns. They were both fantasy monsters in that game. The Bucks, they wore the Buccaneers uniforms. I love it. It looked great. But overall, we got to talk about it. The Bucks, it's obviously the defense has been an issue this year. They just keep giving up point after point. But Baker, I love Baker. I still think he has his flashes. He can definitely take them to the playoffs this year, but he has a turnover problem at this point. I believe he's had multiple turnovers in each of his last 3 games. I know he throws touchdowns, but it just feels like with these injuries now, hopefully Mike Evans can come back very soon. But it just seems like they're struggling, and I know it was a shootout technically, but the fact that you're letting Kirk Cousins, and props to Kirk Cousins, he has absolutely dominated the Bucs this year. I have it down. He's averaged 392.5 yards per game and 4 touchdowns against the Bucs in these 2 games this year. Absolutely insane. Props to him. He's been great. But I think there's just a lot of holes on this team that people are going to overlook because the Bucs have had these explosive performances here and there this season. They've won their division 4 years in a row. I get it. But now with these injuries, it feels like they're being exposed more. And Baker really needs to clean up his act if they want to have a chance of winning these games and make the playoffs. Because they're missing a lot of big elements on their defense. I feel like they don't have this star pass rusher. I like Vita Vea, but he's more of a run stuffer. They don't have that edge guy. And that just proves why Kirk Cousins has been so dominant against the Bucs because, you know, his thing is play action, but since he tore his Achilles, they're not doing it as much. So Kirk needs to sit in the pocket and not be as mobile. And the fact that the Bucs don't have a guy that can get to him regularly, it's just going to result in another like 400-yard game, 4 touchdowns for Kirk Cousins. So it sucks. They got to play the Chiefs next week. It feels like even that loss against the Falcons a few weeks ago, that shifted the momentum of their season. And I don't want to be too negative, but man, the Bucs, just a tough break here in the middle of the season so far. But props to the Falcons. What a game once again. They played well. But let's move on. We got a few more games to talk about. This one will go, I guess, quicker because you guys are probably sick of me talking about them, but I have to mention them. Chiefs, Raiders. You know, as long as they keep winning, I got to mention them because they're the best team in the NFL. They're undefeated, 7-0. The Chiefs get another one, 27-20. It really wasn't as close as the score said, just like last week against the Niners. They scored kind of garbage touchdown. Anyways, let's start with the Kansas City pass defense. I want to start with just a negative really quickly. And I felt like they struggled at times, and it makes complete sense because if you guys don't know, Jalen Watson, our cornerback 2, broke his ankle last week. It was bad. He might be missing the rest of the season. That was an issue so far. The fact that you let Gardner Minshew make a lot of these big plays. We couldn't get off the field on 3rd down. Now, yes, we did play pretty solid after we gave up the touchdown on their first drive. And even the garbage touchdown they scored, it was a little more prevent defense. But just an eye out. Keep an eye out on that because, you know, the trade deadline's coming up. We actually just gave away a 6th-round pick for Josh Uche, which, if you don't know him, he's a very solid pass rusher who had a double-digit sack season already on his resume for the Patriots of all teams. The fact that we gave up a 6th-rounder for him, that's crazy. That's going to add a big element on our pass rush with him, George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, FAU, and Charles Omenihu coming back from injury very soon. That's huge. So good on them. I feel like if they have enough money, maybe they don't. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't because they've made so many moves. But if the Chiefs have enough money just to get even like a veteran corner in to just take away some reps from guys that aren't used to playing so much, like Chris Roland Williams, who I believe was an undrafted free agent this year. Najee Johnson just got hurt as well. You don't want Shamari Connor and Joshua Williams being in there too often. Let's go to Mahomes. I felt like he put together probably his 2nd best game of the season. I would say against the Saints was still his best game, even against the Ravens. But top 3 game this season for Mahomes. He still has more interceptions than touchdowns. This time I got to give him a pass. The ball was just tipped. It felt like it really wasn't his fault. But DeAndre Hopkins, that's another guy. We just signed him. He's in the lineup. He had 2 catches for 29 yards, which obviously it's a nothing statistic. But if you actually watch the game, the eye test already off the bat, that first 3rd down conversion got me so hyped. Just the fact, it felt like Mahomes very confidently placed the ball there for Hopkins. Like, he wasn't worried that Hopkins was going to drop the ball like a lot of these guys that he's trying to take these shots to. It just doesn't hit because he's not that confident communicating with them. But the fact that the 2 catches that Hopkins had already were tough catches to make, I think both on 3rd down. One was at the sideline too. That was a great catch. I don't care that he was limited in this game. Save him a little bit. The fact that we're slowly working him in this offense and he already had 2 good highlight catches means the world to Chiefs fans, because we were looking for this guy to replace Rashee Rice, especially now that he's out for the year. And I think that, they're going to build that chemistry week after week, and it's going to become scary playoff time. It really is. So that was exciting to see. People were saying Xavier Worthy has struggled a little bit this year. I think still he's definitely a net positive. He's had some drops. He's had some miscommunication issues. He definitely needs to hit the weight room this offseason because he's just getting clamored and devoured after these catches sometimes. Like, there was a play where he could have had a touchdown, but he just could not body a guy at all. He just was taken down, and then he lost the ball, and it was an incomplete pass. But look, Xavier Worthy, he has 5 touchdowns this year. It's only game 7. He's had some flashes. I'm not worried about it. They're going to get their shit together for sure. I think he's already been a very solid rookie. The Raiders just never learn. Sure, occasionally they'll beat us. But there was a time a few years ago where they took laps around our stadium after beating us, and then they didn't win for like the next 3 years. And, look, the Chiefs are very humble when it comes to those types of things, but they do not forget it, especially Mahomes. I love petty Mahomes when he plays against these teams. He knows in the back of his mind. He even said it in training camp. It'll get handled when it gets handled, and it got handled yesterday. On Sunday. 2 more games left before we get to our Week 9 predictions. We got the Sunday Night Football game, Cowboys 49ers. 49ers won this one 30-24. They take the W. And look, with the 49ers, Jordan Mason, he's done. He just got injured again. He's done. But luckily, they have the bye to regroup. They're 4-4. They're tied for first place in the division. They needed this one badly. If they were 3-5 going into the bye, they're going to have a lot of conversations. But the fact that they're still in it to win the division, with Christian McCaffrey most likely coming back in Week 10, this is the 49ers team that I keep talking about. Like, I've said this a couple times, like, they were the best 2-3 or 3-4 team I've seen in a long time. This is exactly the spot they needed to be in. They needed to beat the Cowboys for their own confidence and now to rest up going into Week 10. So there you go for the 49ers. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game because, yes, it's a classic matchup. It's a rivalry. It was in prime time. These teams have played each other a lot lately. They have a lot of history. But if we're talking about recent history, this game was just same old between these two teams. It was the Cowboys having flashes, but then ultimately when it mattered most, they crumpled. Dak had multiple interceptions, and they just can't get it done against what their big brother looks like in the 49ers. It just felt like it was the same story. So I don't really actually have much to say. I'm sure a lot of the big media is going to be talking about the Cowboys and how they're 3-4 now, and Dak has a turnover problem this year, and it feels like things are starting to fall apart, and they have no running game, which a lot of those things are definitely true. But it just feels like when the same thing happens over and over again, like, what else do you even want me to say? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, prove it to me, Cowboys. Like, you're 3-4. So it just felt like it was the same old story, and a very predictable game on Sunday Night Football. All right, I saved this game for last. It's Bears-Commanders, game of the week for sure, or ending of the week at least. The Commanders win it 18-15. And if you guys didn't watch it, please go watch it. This is why we love football, for those moments. If you don't know it, Jayden Daniels launches like a 60-yard pass at the end of the game. Things were looking bleak. The ball tips up. Noah Brown comes away with it. They're calling it the Maryland Miracle, Hail Mary. Jim Nantz had a great call of that play. It was just havoc in the stadium. He was mentioning how the city was going crazy. There was shock. It felt like the Commanders won the Super Bowl. And it truly felt like this is officially the moment where you welcome the Commanders into the NFL as this brand new franchise. The curse has been lifted off of Dan Snyder selling the team finally, and they're here to stay. The Commanders are here to stay as an organization that, especially with Jayden Daniels, as long as he stays healthy, they're going to be here for a long time. So that was an exciting moment to see. I'm sorry, Bears fans, cover your ears. You guys really had a great comeback in the second half, and just plays like this. You know what it felt like? And it sucks that Caleb Williams had a nice drive at the end of the game to put them ahead. It sucks that that's going to be forgotten and go to waste. It reminds me a lot of the Cardinals-Bills game in 2020, where Josh Allen had a great drive at the end of the game and a touchdown pass to Stephon Diggs, which you thought for sure they were going to win that game. And then the Hail Murray, they call it, to DeAndre Hopkins happened. Very similar to that. It started 12-0. Commanders, they couldn't even get a touchdown on the board. The Hail Mary is their only touchdown of the game. It just felt like it was this ugly defensive match where the Commanders were moving the ball, but they were just settling for field goals, and they were fine with that because they were just shutting down the Bears. And then the DeAndre Swift touchdown happened, which opened the floodgates for all havoc to be wreaked in this game. And the Bears kept their cool, came back, won it in the final moments. And then that shit happened, man. It's just crazy. I love rewatching moments like that of sports in general, but football, it only comes once every few seasons to have a real miracle like that. We had the Miami Miracle, the Minneapolis Miracle, the Cardinals one, and now this, just in the regular season. These are the moments you wait for all season. And the fact that the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary is now going to be forgotten about because of this Hail Mary. There's already 2 Hail Marys converted this season, which is crazy. And you want to talk about Tyreek Stevenson on the Bears, how he was completely taunting the home crowd, telling them, you know, bring the noise, whatever, we won. And then he's like, oh shit, the play just started. And he runs over to try to defend the Hail Mary. Guess whose hands the ball tipped off of to go right into Noah Brown's hands? Yeah, it tipped off of Tyreek Stevenson's hands. So that was a bit of karma there. Props to him. He actually came out and apologized for, you know, the taunting that he did. And he did own up to it. I feel like a lot of cornerbacks are kind of cocky where they wouldn't do that. So I guess props to him in that regard. But man, just so many things that people are now going to be talking about. It flipped the switch on both of their seasons, especially for the Commanders, since the Eagles won. And we haven't really talked a lot about the Eagles, but apparently they're just, I guess they're good now. I don't know. I don't want to talk about too much of them this week. So not only was it a huge win just in terms of emotions, but in the grand scheme of things, that was crazy. And the Bears, the same thing. I was talking about how if the Bears would have won, they would have been right there with the Vikings, ahead of them, I think, maybe. But now they're 4-3. Oh, and Caleb Williams, you saw it on the sideline. He was pissed that they lost that game. And he was throwing fits. And, man, it was just a tale of two sides of the field. You saw the Commanders players and coaches just running out, going crazy. And yeah, I know I'm talking a lot about the emotional side of this game and not all the ins and outs, but it's hard when you witness a moment like that. I was just sitting on my couch. I was like, yeah, it's just one of those Hail Mary plays. Jayden Daniels is taking forever to throw it. Tony Romo mentioned it in the broadcast that, you know, since he had his injury, he felt like Jayden Daniels probably wouldn't throw it far enough to get the Hail Mary converted, and they should have brought in Marcus Mariota to throw it, and then Jayden Daniels goes out there, takes his sweet time, winds it up, and I'm like, this is probably not even going to reach the end zone. It reaches a perfect part of the end zone right in the front, which, once again, Tony Romo also mentioned this. Props to him. I know I don't like Tony Romo, but he actually called a pretty good game, I will admit. Every team should have this when they have a Hail Mary play, which is have a guy not jump for the ball and just sit behind in case he gets tipped up so he can just easily catch it for the win. And that's exactly what happened. And just a very smart play. Just a well-coached team, the Commanders are, seriously. Even though it was technically a miracle, just to have a play like that where Noah Brown was sitting there, it was perfect. It was perfect. And it just proves that they're a team that is now not cursed. And they're pulling out wins like this. I mean, what a magical season for Washington so far. And I hope it keeps going because I like them. They deserve it. The fans deserve it. The organization deserves it. And I like Jaden Daniels. So hopefully they keep on trucking. Really, really tough for the Bears. But look, at this point, like, how much more can you do? You had a great drive at the end that'll sadly be forgotten, and that's it. You just lost on a miracle, crazy play. So, yeah, game of the week for sure. One of the best moments of the season. But we got to move on. That was a lot to talk about. Wow, what a crazy week. But let's cheers to hoping that week 9 is just like that, because that's what football is all about, is those awesome moments in those games. All right, let's move on to week 9. We got our games up here. We're going to predict every single game. We'll go through it quickly. Let's start with Thursday Night Football. Jets, Texans at MetLife. I have no hope about the Jets. I don't want to talk about them too often, so I'm going to pick the Texans to win this game 27-17. All right, let's move to the 1 o'clock slate. Panthers, Saints. Now, if there's a game where the Saints could have just any bit of dignity left on their plate, if anything, it's to hopefully go into Carolina and beat them. I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers just beat them and then Dennis Allen gets fired right after that game. Dennis Allen should be fired, regardless. But, sure, I'll pick the Saints just because the Panthers are so horrible and have no talent, basically. So, yeah, let's pick the Saints to win this game 20-13. And then Giants, Commanders. Now, the Commanders, we just talked about them. They came off of one of the biggest wins of their entire franchise of the 21st century. And the Giants are extremely desperate. They are, they play tonight. We don't know if they're going to win tonight. You'll know when this clip comes out, but let's say they lose. They're 2-6. And yeah, they desperately need this. They actually do usually get a win on the Commanders once a year. But this is a different Commanders team. I just said that. I think Jaden Daniels is going to go into MetLife and play very well. And they're going to come out with the win 24-16. All right, Bills, Dolphins is your next game in Buffalo. This is an interesting one because the Dolphins are desperate. They did struggle against the Bills in week 2. That was the game that Tua got hurt, of course. Man, it sucks because I like the Dolphins. I want them to win this game, especially as a Chiefs fan. I want the Bills to lose. But they're at home. I feel like they're just going to keep rolling. And the Bills are going to win this game against a struggling Miami team with low confidence, even with Tua back. So I'm going to pick the Bills to win this one 31-24. And then Browns, Chargers is your next game in Cleveland. I feel like Jim Harbaugh coaching against Jameis Winston, he's going to find a way to shut him down. And I just said this earlier in the podcast that Jameis Winston, he had his 3-touchdown game. He can do that. That's his ceiling. Now it feels like he's going to go back towards his floor. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if he had multiple interceptions in this game. I'm sorry, Browns fans. I know you don't want to hear that. And I don't even want to pick the Chargers as a Chiefs fan, but I'm going to pick them to win it 23-17 Chargers. All right, Titans, Patriots is your next game. I mean, I don't want to watch this game at all. I'm not interested. This could just skate through red zone. Just show the scoring plays. You don't really have to show anything else, to be completely honest. And I think that I don't know who's gonna win this game. Fuck it, I'll pick the home team, the Titans, to win this game 17-14. Who cares? Okay, Falcons, Cowboys is the next game. Big game, actually. Very big game. Luckily, the Falcons were able to get their win, and now they're at home. The Cowboys are desperate. I don't know who's favored to win this game. I'm going to guess since the Falcons have a better record and they're at home, they're favored, which is going to make it an upset alert. I'm picking the Cowboys to win this game. It's going to be very close. It's coming down to a Brandon Aubrey game-winning field goal, 27-24 Cowboys. Bengals Raiders is your next game. Now, we didn't talk about the Bengals on this podcast, but I mean, just they have to win this game. If they lose to the Raiders, they're kind of like the Jets. Like, I don't even want to talk about them for the rest of the season. If they lose to the Raiders, a team that is just an absolute disaster right now. I know the Bengals defense sucks, but like, come on, you got to win at home. You're desperate. You got to play the Ravens the week after that. So Bengals, guys, you have to win. So I'll pick you guys, and I'll make it close because it's the Bengals. I'll have them winning 24-20. Bengals. Ravens-Broncos is the next game. The Ravens are going to have a bounce back, although I like the Broncos defense. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if the Broncos defense, how much they can contain Lamar Jackson in this game, because they've been very, very solid all season. They're 5-3, but it's tough. They got to go into Baltimore. I'm sure the Ravens are pissed off after losing to the Browns. But I think it's going to be lower scoring than most of you think, just because of the Broncos defense. So I will pick the Ravens to win this 22-14. Cardinals-Bears, start of the 4 o'clock window. Another really interesting matchup. Didn't seem like it towards the beginning of the season, but both of these teams have 4 wins. They would love to win this game, of course. Caleb Williams is probably pissed off, and he has a nice matchup against this Cardinals defense. Can Kyler Murray keep it going? It's going to be tough against one of the best defenses in the NFL and the Bears. So I actually want to pick the Bears to win this one. I think it's going to be another really close game coming down to the wire, and the Bears are going to pull it out 23-21. Eagles-Jaguars. This was the Sunday Night Football game that got demoted to the 4 o'clock window because, yeah, it's Eagles-Jaguars. Who gives a shit? Anyways, the Eagles are wearing their Kelly Green uniforms, which makes me want to automatically pick them to win it. I still feel like they're just not this elite team. It feels like they have to collapse at some point, doesn't it? But I guess not. They've just been playing solid football, and I keep doubting them. I know I'm wearing this costume today, so I should pick Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, but I honestly have no confidence with a healthy Eagles offense. I think Saquon's going to get it going. The Jags defense has absolutely nothing to offer, and the Eagles are at home. So, sorry, Jaguars fans. I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this one and move to 6-2, surprisingly. I'll pick them to win it 28-20 Eagles. All right, and then Seahawks, Rams, a big divisional matchup. The Rams need this one bad, and if the Seahawks lose this one as well at home, it just feels like their season is heading in the complete wrong direction. They just got killed by the Bills, and unfortunately, I got to pick the Rams. I hate to say it for Seahawks fans, but yep, the Rams are going to slide closer and closer to a potential playoff spot, which is surprising after all the injuries they got, but now they're healthy. And I think, once again, another close matchup. So I'll pick the Rams to win this 23-20. And then your final 4 o'clock game. This is a really fun matchup. Now, we'll see if Jordan Love is healthy. It's Packers-Lions in Green Bay. I mean, look, some would say if Malik Willis is playing, great. They're undefeated with him. But all that aside, the Lions are probably the best team in the NFL, not named the Chiefs, especially their offense. And it's going to be such an interesting matchup to see Jared Goff against the Packers defense that has had really good moments this season in Green Bay. Man, this is going to tell a lot about who I really truly think is your Super Bowl contender. If the Lions win this one, man, what a season they've had so far. And you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do it. Especially if Jordan Love is out. I'm going to pick the Lions to keep on rolling and win this big divisional matchup 30-24. All right, Sunday Night Football. This is the game that was flexed into the Sunday slot. Vikings-Colts at Minnesota. It's a sneaky good matchup. I know Al just kind of gave a face there, like, why is Vikings-Colts on Sunday Night Football? I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that. It was the rematch of 2 years ago, the greatest comeback in regular season history, if you don't remember that. That was a great game. But if they're starting Anthony Richardson against the Vikings defense, I think no doubt the Vikings are winning this game. I said this earlier in the podcast. Like, Joe Flacco should be the starter right now. Anthony Richardson is making way too many mistakes. I think this is a bad matchup for him. I'm going to pick the Vikings to win this game 34-24. All right, final game, Monday Night Football. My favorite team, the Chiefs, taking on the Bucs. So I felt like going into this year, this was the trap game for the Chiefs. It just felt like they were going to go in here and lay an egg, but the Bucs defense is really just abysmal this season. And they're dealing with a lot of injuries. Baker's been turning over the ball lately. The Chiefs defense is gaining a lot of momentum. They're playing really, really good football this year. And I just feel like DeAndre Hopkins, this is the game we see him get at least 5 catches, maybe over 50 yards, and maybe even a touchdown. So I'm going to keep rolling with my team, of course, to move to 8-0. That's crazy that I'm even saying that. But hopefully they do it. Hopefully they pull it off on Monday Night Football. I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win it 27-19. All right, and there you go. That was this episode of First and Gold. Man, we had so much to cover. That was a lot of fun. I hope you guys also had a lot of fun watching this week. And yeah, comment down below what you thought about all these crazy games, crazy moments, what you think about my record predictions for the games in Week 9. But yeah, overall, thank you guys for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us at First and Gold on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So yeah, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week for another video. And guys, have a happy Halloween and a good weekend. Goodbye.